coronavirus pandemic has turned our world upside down. Here at Brooklyn Friends School, we have had to innovate and adapt to the new reality. From brainstorming creative solutions for Zoom classes to preparing for in-person community times, our community has persevered. On today's show, we will be asking BFS alumni first responders how their lives have been impacted and how BFS has shaped their work today. All right, great. So today we have Joy Dixon joining us for this episode of The Life. Joy, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So my name's Joy Dixon, and I graduated from BFS in 2004. And currently, I'm a registered nurse at NYU Langone Health, and I work on the adult Langone emergency response team.
I have a few questions for you today. So the first one is, why did you choose to go into the medical and healthcare field?
So for me, I was always very interested in healthcare. I loved surgery. I was that kid that was watching Super Surgery online, or not online, on PBS, but I enjoyed learning about surgeries and healthcare, and I like working with people.
Of course, right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, so I'm wondering, how has the coronavirus pandemic affected your work? I guess, how has your work changed since the pandemic happened?
So I would say maybe the second or third week of March is when most people started coming in positive with coronavirus, or at least ones that we knew of. And the entire hospital just went into overdrive. It was just an influx of people. And then we were searching for supplies like PPE, such as the N95 masks that filter out 95% of particles that actually protect us against coronavirus. We're short on that, short on, contact gowns, short on ventilators. So I think in the beginning, there was a lot of scrambling to make sure we had enough equipment and space to accommodate all the people coming in. And then many of them were coming in very, very sick. They were critically ill. They needed to be intubated. They needed airway management, basically. People were coming in, they weren't oxygenating well. They need to be intubated. They need to go to ICU. They need to be ventilated for a while. We were overwhelmed by the amount of people, the equipment, the new techniques we needed to use to keep people alive and help them get better. And now we've, I don't know, it's a lot of changes have happened over the year. And even now, everybody has to wear a mask everywhere you go in the hospital, whether it's a surgical mask or an N95. Every patient that comes through the door is tested for COVID now. All the rooms are airborne, so that the air doesn't blow out of the room, air blows in, so they're not potentially blowing coronavirus outside the rooms. Yeah, I think things have definitely changed a lot this year.
How has attending Brooklyn Friends School influenced your work? How did BFS shape who you are today as well?
BFS definitely shaped me. I think BFS exposed me to a lot of things that I wouldn't have seen if I wasn't there. Even classes from art and ceramics to dance concerts, and it showed me a different side of the world. Looking basically getting to know people for who they are. Not being judgmental. Trying to create peace among people. And I think that those ideals I've carried into adulthood because as a nurse, you work with people from many different backgrounds, and, it's basically the worst time of their lives when they're hospitalized, and, they can lash out at you, they can be angry. And, my first thought isn't to yell back at them. My first thought is, they could be in pain. They could be, they're in pain. They're frustrated. They might've gotten horrible news today. My thought is to try to create the peace first when approaching my patients. And I think a lot of that comes from just being part of the BFS community.
Yeah, I definitely think patients in hospitals, they must be feeling a range of emotions, and you understand the challenges that they're facing, and of course the challenges that healthcare workers are experiencing as well. What advice do you have for anyone who is interested in going into the medical field?
To be open. open to people and the new experiences that you're going to have, because healthcare there's no field like it. And I think when you work with people so intimately, you never know what to expect. Like whether it's something a patient says or whether it's something you see, you really just need to be open to people. And then everything else will come. Like if you're interested in medicine, like you're going to study and it's going to be interesting and you're going to learn a lot. So those things will come naturally, but you definitely have to be open to people, different types of people.
What is one thing you really want the public to understand right now?
One thing I'd like the public to understand is that coronavirus is very serious. So most people, healthy people can have mild cases of COVID, and they can just have fevers and chills for, a couple weeks, maybe lose their taste, and then they'll be okay. But there are many people who got COVID in the spring, and they're continuing to suffer from the sequela of that disease. And you never know who that person would be. Some of them have comorbidities, some of them don't. Some of them are old, some of them are young in their 30s. So I've seen, because I've worked with so many coronavirus patients, I've seen like people do well, and I've seen people, die, and I've seen people just be chronically ill, and I know that they'll still have lifelong issues just because of their prolonged hospitalization as a result of coronavirus. So I think it's important for people to take it seriously, to wear a mask when you're out in public, and to avoid large gatherings, because until we have a vaccine or better treatment for it, take it seriously.
So today we have Daniel Eden joining us for this episode of The Life. Daniel, can you please tell us what year you graduated from Brooklyn Friends School and your current job title?
Sure. So I graduated in 2006, so it's been a while. I'm currently a resident physician at New York Presbyterian Hospital, so I'm in my third year of training, so third year resident in psychiatry.
So why did you choose to go into the medical field?
Actually, when I was at Brooklyn Friends, I had very little, if any, interest in medicine. I kind of, going into college, was interested in business and economics, and that's sort of what I studied when I was at Georgetown. And then as I was there, I kind of became more interested in getting involved in something where I was able to make more of an impact on individual people's lives and the way I wanted to connect with people as a doctor. That got me interested in medicine.
My next question is, how has the coronavirus pandemic affected your work?
In more ways than I can count. I think it's affected everyone. I think the psychological impacts on patients have been very different. There was this kind of acute anxiety response early on, and now a lot of it is how people are adjusting. We're seeing a lot of changes with COVID and how they're tolerating psychiatric illness and more generally psychological factors. I mean, I treat patients with obsessive compulsive disorder who already had issues, for example, with obsessions about cleanliness and hygiene and infections. I treat psychotic patients who have a hard time digesting kind of real information, and mood disorders and anxiety disorders. And those have all shifted and needed a lot more attention during COVID. People are more anxious. They are getting depressed at higher rates. And are feeling disconnected from people. Attending to your mental health care, no matter who you are, and making sure you're getting help if you are struggling is really important. For doctors and healthcare professionals, it's been sort of a roller coaster. It's changed every week, every month, every day to some extent. It's continuing to change as things kind of spike in New York now. We start out our residency and our training in internal medicine and neurology. So there's a lot of intersection there. When Corona started, we had to kind of, be able and willing to step into those kind of medical roles that we were trained in very early on, but haven't actually been practicing kind of formally in a lot of ways. So for example, we were told starting out that we might have to go work in the intensive care units in the hospital, care for patients who were on ventilators and things like that. So one, that was really scary because it's not something it's not a setting we're used to really working in. And it's also, like everybody else, we were scared, and all doctors were scared of being exposed to the virus early on, especially when there was a lack of equipment and things available to keep us safe or know that we were safe. It was a big experience, and a lot of our like traditional roles and rotations kind of shifted early on. Some of that's gone back to normal, but some of it honestly has not. And I'm happy that we're doing a little more psychiatry and things that we're trained in than we were initially. But it's been a big shift.
How has attending Brooklyn Friends influenced your work and your life today?
Being exposed early on to a very diverse population that goes to Brooklyn Friends, and that's something that Brooklyn Friends is really just passionate about, and I know continues to be passionate about to this day, ultimately influenced my decision to want to be a doctor and want to go into psychiatry, where some of your primary responsibilities and the reason it's such a cool field is that you get to learn about different people's backgrounds, learn about the most kind of intimate details of their lives, and figure out how, given those backgrounds, you can help them. And I think that's something I kind of learned to do early on at Brooklyn Friends, and enjoyed learning about other people. I'm not Quaker, I'm Jewish, but learning about different religions and different cultures and being able to reflect on those is something I don't know if I would have been able to do in the same way if I hadn't gone to Brooklyn Friends. And yeah, it's an experience I would never give back.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
My next question is, what advice do you have for anyone who is interested in going into the medical field?
I guess for students at Brooklyn Friends, you get exposure to science, but medicine is kind of a very unique type of exposure within the science world. It's not something I was exposed to. I think in order to really figure out what it is and the kinds of work you can do with patients, the kind of difference you can make, you got to kind of be a self-starter and get yourself involved, do some volunteer work, reach out to alumni like me and other people in the medical field to figure out, what it really is like to be a doctor, what it's like to be a psychiatrist. That's even sort of a smaller bubble within that field. Takes a lot of work, I will say, both in high school, college, med school. You have to like studying and learning to some extent, but also really interacting with the human element of medicine.
What is one thing you really want the public to understand right now?
I think just remaining vigilant. We just got news from the hospital that vaccines are coming, especially for kind of first-line workers, and that there's hope on the horizon. But in the meantime, I think it's easy to sort of get complacent and not do what you need to do to keep yourself safe, because we're all like sick and tired of quarantining and not having our normal lives as a doctor and working with nurses and other healthcare people. We're really, doing everything we can to keep everyone in the city safe. So it's really important that until this is over that people, keep the big picture in mind.
Thank you, Joy Dixon and Dr. Daniel Eden, for sharing how your life has been impacted during this pandemic. I gained insight into how healthcare workers' lives have changed and the rewarding path of the medical field. This is Evelyn Yu reporting for The Life, and remember to let your life speak.